This is the webinar on hiring writers for content. It's Doug Cunnington here from Niche Site Project. With any luck, you can hear me right now. I have a microphone right here. Sometimes it's unclear if this stuff is working until it's too late. I do see we have like 9 people on. Please say hello in the chat. I imagine you'll let me know if you can't hear me. If you're watching the replay, thanks for checking it out. There's a little like intro as we are waiting for people to join. I'm just going to do some talking. This is the webinar for content and hiring people on Upwork. I'm going to show you how to grow a team basically through phases, right? There's going to be like 5 phases. I'll show you like my org chart. It's quite simple, but I show you how to grow from a team of 1, just yourself, up to a team of however many you want in a very systematic way. John is on. What's up? Jerry says the sound is good. That's great also. And yeah, so we'll just hang out here for a minute. By the way, just curious, if it's the first time you're joining one of these webinars, let me know. Just always like to hear about that. I think there's a couple little questions in here just so I get an idea of like who's on, and I can really tailor the presentation based on who's here and the experience level. So John and Jerry, let me know, do you have like a niche site right now? Or are you just thinking about getting started with it? Are you looking to expand content, or where you're at right now? Maul's on. What's up? Good to have you on, Maul. Welcome. So I just got back from a conference last night. I went to the Converted conference that's put on by Lead Pages. It was awesome. It was really cool, really well done. I think like in the range of conferences, I heard it was kind of expensive. I think it was like $600 to $800 depending on like which package you got. I got the package where you can watch the videos later, which is great. So I'll be able to go back and take notes. It was amazing. It was really cool. The main thing that I wanted out of the conference was, networking and meeting people, stuff like that. And of course, you're only limited by yourself as far as like what you want to get into and how many hours you want to try and network with people. But yeah, for me, it went great. I probably, for me, if I just made one like good connection, I think it would have been totally worth it. And I met probably, 3-4 people that I'm probably going to contact and work with on some capacity afterwards, whether it's, me being on their podcast or them being on my YouTube channel or whatever. So yeah, it was great overall. It was my very first conference. And I think like right when I, first started talking to people, like at the first breakfast, I was a little off my game just because, I work at home. I work here at this desk most of the time. But the thing is, I was very tired that morning. And, I thought like, I was talking to this woman who has like a blog and like a small course, but it went weird, like pretty quick. There's a lot of like fast conversations that happen in an event like that. Several hundred people were there, but she, we were eating breakfast, and I was like, hey, good talking to you. If you need to go, if you're going to get more food or whatever, I was giving her a way out, and she was like, oh yeah, I'm going to say hi to these people. And I thought it was me because I was like, man, she bailed fast and like was uninterested in what I had to say at all. So I guess she was meeting up with some of her friends. And again, I thought it was still me. But I realized later, because I saw her throughout the conference, she like didn't talk to anyone else. She stayed in like her little group. So I guess they were all in maybe a little mastermind or something. But it definitely wasn't me. But since it was the first person I talked to, I was like, am I like way behind everyone else here? Like, what's the deal? But anyway, it was okay. I never talked to her again, and it wasn't a very good connection overall with her. But there were plenty of other people. There was this cool guy named Ravi, who he'll probably be on some video that you'll see before too long. He worked at Microsoft for several years and eventually went the way of digital nomad stuff before he's like developed some coaching around like coaching executives and stuff, of which he actually has experience. So he's not like some life coach. Okay. And I see that Jerry says that you have an automotive site. You need to add pages. That's cool. John had a site a few years ago, but you're starting again. Adam says he's new to the webinar, but you have a few sites. You're having trouble finding good writers, how to scale content creation, how to template article style, and so on. So this presentation is going to be perfect for you, Adam. And I think if you refer back to, there's a presentation from last week. It may not be on YouTube yet. I'm not sure if I've published it over there yet. I don't think I have. But in that case, you know, as far as like templates for articles, like that's the sort of stuff you may want to get into. It was like 2 ways to streamline content. There's actually a blog post on that on that topic as well. All right. So we have a little bit of a lighter crowd today. We got 13 people, so that means you can ask all the questions. By the way, Q&A is at the end. You can ask throughout. It's helpful if you mark the question as a question. So you can, if you don't, you know, like I said, it looks like a light crowd today, which is fine. But if you don't mark it, I should still be able to see it, but it's much easier for me to see the questions if you mark it as a question. Paul says, it's your first webinar. Welcome. Thanks, folks, by the way, for if you are attending. I know it's tough to make time, especially this time of the day, but glad you were able to make it on. You have 2 sites. Neither have generated any money. You've been creating all the content yourself. You'd like to bring in writers for additional content. And I'll just, before we even get into the material, Paul, how much content do you already have? I do find that people that are just following other advice that they see online often will just publish a whole lot of content. Like someone emailed me and talked to me the other day, said, you know, I have 150 pieces of content and there, you know, there's no traffic, and, you know, do I need to add more content? I think I need to publish something every day, maybe twice a day. And I felt bad for the person, first of all, because, you know, you don't need that much content. A lot of people, a lot of, you know, my peers, right? There's other ways to do things. I try to bring my approach from project management. I'll talk more about myself later, like people like to do. I'll talk about myself. But the thing is, they, these other marketers, they have a budget, right? They've built a few websites already, at least. They have a budget and they're able to put in, you know, thousands of dollars in hundreds of hours of time, maybe not their own, but they're able to put in a lot of time and effort into a site before they get any revenue or they get any sort of traffic or anything. They totally ignore that fact when they're giving advice. They're doing live case studies and stuff like that. And they tell you, yeah, you know, we're going to publish all this content. We're doing the authority site model, that kind of stuff. That is horrible advice because most people are going to quit before they get any traction. It's foolish for them to tell people to publish that much content without doing any other, you know, link building or any other efforts. So my approach is more like publish 10 pieces of content and then work on promoting that content. Spend more time promoting that content, which is good, high quality. I'm not saying 10 pieces of content that is bad. It should be very good to excellent content. And then you go out there and you promote it, and you get some traffic through, you know, a couple different methods, of which it's beyond the scope of the topic today. So I can't get into it too much, but it's like a 2-step process. It's quite simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. So the thing is, you need to publish some amount of content, and then you need to work on promoting it. And it's an agile project management idea so that you get a deliverable, like income producing piece of work that's complete. Because if you like get 100 pieces of content and it takes you a year to do, and then you have to spend another 6 months like doing the promotion, You're 18 months in, you're thousands of dollars in the hole, and your family and friends think you're crazy because you're spending all this time and money. They don't believe in the concepts that you're telling them. You keep saying, well, I know that, other people are doing it, so maybe I just haven't figured it out yet, which is true. As long as you keep going, you're going to figure it out. But the idea is to get traffic sooner, and don't just rely on publishing content and expecting people to show up. It's just not going to work anymore. All right. So I talked a lot about just random stuff. Let's get over to the presentation and get into it. So here we go. All right. So this is how to hire writers for niche sites without stress. And apparently it is a stressful thing. I had several emails from folks in the last day or two on, basically trying to hire people. And I know it's stressful. It's one of the most common things I hear about. Of course, people read books like The 4-Hour Work Week, which I thought it was sitting right next to me, but they read books like The 4-Hour Work Week. You think you may be able to hire people in an easy way and outsource things, but normally it's more complicated than that. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll understand how to hire, one writer, and then grow your team from there should you need that additional help. And hopefully it won't be stressful for you. Hopefully it'll be an easy thing that you can replicate and do again and again. People can hear me, so that's good. By the way, I am Doug Cunnington. I don't think I mentioned it too much. Doug Cunnington from Niche Site Project, and that is my late dog. Unfortunately, he passed away earlier this year. He was old and he had cancer. It was sad, but he was like 15 years old. And that's my dad there. We're Old Faithful. I actually live like fairly close to Old Faithful, like an hour and a half away. Maybe it takes a couple hours to get all the way to the geyser, but Yellowstone's pretty close is the point. And I have been featured or quoted on a lot of different blogs and even Social Triggers by Derek Halpern. So this is sort of the why should you listen to me portion. And I'm sure you recognize several of these blogs and names and stuff like that. So I have some skills around certain areas, and I'm a project management professional, a PMP. So I had a corporate gig for a few years, like a decade or so. And that's the thing I bring, as I was referring to earlier. Like, a lot of people are good at internet marketing. There's not many like project managers that have stepped into internet marketing, and I've been putting a framework around things. And I have a different take where, like I said, some people are, bulldogs, and they can put their head down and they're just going to power through. They're going to publish a ridiculous amount of content. They're just going to have the faith that it's going to work, and they don't need any feedback. Those are rare people, and a lot of times, it's much better if we publish, like I said, 10 pieces of content. You go out there, promote it for a few weeks, you start getting some traffic, you start getting some sales, and then those small wins are super important. A lot of people ignore that. So, okay, here's my niche site timeline. I got started in like 2013 after I heard the Smart Passive Income podcast by Pat Flynn. Anybody fan of the podcast or the blog? He spoke yesterday, and it was awesome. Really great presentation by Pat. Thing is, I really wanted to meet him in whatever meetup he was going to have, but it's literally happening right now, and he didn't publish it until like a couple weeks ago. So I already booked my flights and stuff, so I couldn't attend. Pretty disappointed, and I actually talked to a couple other people that were sort of in the same position. So anyway, Smart Passive Income is how I got started in all this. I didn't know anything about niche sites or WordPress or anything before that, and it's been a fun ride. You can see I've had some good successes, some quick success, and I also had several sites penalized. At this point, I'm not doing any sort of gray hat activities, so the risk for those sort of penalties is much lower. And fast forward, very recently, earlier this summer, a business partner and I sold a site for $235,000, which sounds like a crazy amount of money. If you would have told me, a couple of years ago, or even a year before that, I wouldn't have, thought it could happen. But, it can. As I mentioned, Q&As at the end. Feel free to ask throughout. Please mark them as questions. I see a question came through. So Tuhin, go ahead and mark that as a question, just as practice for yourself to mark things as questions. All right, so this is how to scale content for niche and authority sites, and we'll go through the basics and how to grow the team. So as I mentioned before, I take a different approach because I have, I've built teams, right? I've built fairly large teams. I've interviewed, probably over 100 people, professionals, project managers actually. So these are people with lots of experience. In a lot of cases, they had more experience than me that I was hiring on my team. And, through that sort of process of growing teams and, at one point, just take a step back, in this corporate gig that I had, I was part of an interview team, the management team that grew from, I think we had 45 people to 100 and change. I can't remember exactly, but we had over 100 PMs by the time we expanded. And, I worked on the onboarding. I was hiring people, reviewing resumes, doing the full sort of picture there. And, we were obviously aggressively growing. And, I took some of the ideas from that and I've applied it here so that it's, there's pictures and stuff. So, get out a piece of paper and write down, notes and write down the pictures if you want to draw the pictures. Okay, let's get into it. So you'll learn about when you should scale a lean content team. And I do this in a modular way so that you can grow the team however big you need it to be. Of course, some people are not going to need to publish, 10 articles a day, but other people may want to, press on the gas and get a little more going up front. I'll talk about a checklist for content managers and editors, and that is a huge thing. It really changed my business. I'll show you some results as well, like real dollars, real traffic numbers. It's not just about adding words, right? Who cares if you're adding content if it doesn't impact your bottom line? The point is to get a positive ROI, right? So don't lose sight of that. I'll talk about the number one thing that saved me a lot of time in 2016. It's huge, and I've probably saved that much time this year already, actually in the last 2 months, because I'm publishing a lot of content again. Okay, so the goal is to increase revenue. So as I mentioned, the point is not to publish more articles if it's not going to help your site. So you need to focus on the revenue portion, right? So keep that in mind throughout. You need to have a positive ROI. We're going to just touch on the keyword golden ratio. It's a data-driven way to find keywords that you can rank for, usually without link building. And this stuff works. If you haven't tried it, you should try it with 1 to 3 articles, and then you'll be a believer, and then you'll keep going with it. Now, I do know that it works because I've had, dozens of people email me. And if you go, look at some of the comments on either the post or the YouTube videos on this, it definitely works. And it's not just me saying it, right? So I've taught other people to do it, and it definitely works. If you're not familiar with the keyword golden ratio, look up the YouTube video, just keyword golden ratio. You should see, 3, 4 of my videos out there, and you'll understand how to do it after that. So what are the facts? So these are, the results of, what went down, how I did it, and that sort of thing. So there was a particular site in 2016, in January of 2016, it made about $100. In December of 2016, it made almost 15,000, just a little short of 15,000. So pretty amazing. growth, of course. And, I obviously had to have some faith that the process was going to work. Now, what I did was, and here's the earnings graph. So I published a lot of content, and it was keyword golden ratio content. So I didn't have to do any link building. It was purely like adding content that I knew was going to rank. So it's a little bit different because my site was already established. As you saw, I was already making $100 a month, and it was around for a little while, right? It was around for several months at that point. So, and there were already some links going to the site. I needed to scale the content, publishing schedule, and that's really what I worked on a lot there. So I hire writers from Upwork. Okay, that's the only place I go. I pay $14 or $15 for every 1,000 words on average, right? I don't pay by the word. I pay by the article, and that way I don't get, fluffy articles that don't have as much information. I don't want redundant sentences or just people trying to fill words. So I don't pay by the word, I pay by the job. But on average, it's about that price. I pay people more if they're good. If you're trying to get like the cheapest content, it's just not going to be worthwhile, right? I mean, again, focus on the revenue. If you're publishing articles that aren't that good because the writers aren't that good, then it's just not going to convert as well. So you need to, keep in mind that you need to optimize for revenue, not for the cheapest price that you can get for articles. Yeah, focus on the ROI. I pay my content manager or editor between $10 and $20 an hour, depending on, their experience level and how long they've been working with me, that sort of thing. It takes the content manager or editor about 45 minutes to an hour to edit one post, okay? So keep that in mind as we're going through. That funny thing, it actually takes me longer. It takes me like an hour and a half or two just because I get into it like in a more detailed way, and I'm just slower than other people. So I'm hiring people better than me at the given task that they have to complete. All right, when should you scale? This is an interesting one because a lot of times we are listening to people that are far ahead of us. For example, when I was at this conference the other day, there were several, most of the speakers were, they're doing like millions of dollars a year in like revenue and profits, right? They're doing millions of dollars a year. And some of their case studies are, they're not so applicable, or at least they're not relatable to a lot of people sitting in the audience. It's just a lot of money. Not many people are at that level. However, when you listen to them, they make it sound like you should be doing it. Now, it's not their fault. They're trying to encourage people to, take some action or whatever. But, when I think about what I'm doing with, say, my Amazon affiliate niche sites, I have to keep in mind that, I can't compare what I'm doing to someone that is 2 or 3 years ahead of me. I can look ahead and be inspired by it. I can, start figuring out how to integrate certain things. But the point is, if you're just getting started with your site, or if you haven't launched your site yet, you don't need to be thinking about scaling yet. You need to focus on the tasks that are closer to, a beginner level, or at least like the age of your site. So if I launched a new site, I would need to, establish it first before I scaled it. If you try and scale too early, you're just going to run into trouble. So the point is, most of the time, you should scale later than you think, and that probably applies to, a lot of things in general, a lot of different businesses. So one gauge that you could take is, the traffic and revenue levels. So if it's stable, traffic and revenue, that's probably good. You should probably have like some amount of, traffic, although it's hard to put, a number on it depending on the size of your site as it exists already. But the point is, we don't want it to be like up and down sort of thing. Now, if you don't have any traffic, then you probably need to focus on the basics, as I mentioned, like the keyword research and outreach and promotion for your site so that you can actually get some traffic and revenue. So that's obviously important. When it comes to revenue, when I did this, I was reinvesting the money. The site was slightly growing anyway, so I was reinvesting the revenue. And, I won't go back to the graph, but, it looked like there wasn't much revenue through a lot of the months, but that was like $1,000 or $2,000. It's just the scale on the graph is sort of skewed. So, as I mentioned, if you don't have the budget, then you should wait till you can afford it. And if you have revenue coming in on the site, reinvesting it is a smart thing to do. Now, growing slowly is important, and I'm going to get into it now. In fact, I'll show you exactly how to do this in a incremental way so that, one, you're not overwhelmed, and two, you'll actually be able to implement it without having a ton of issues. So here's the deal. Each person you hire is going to create more communications channels, and it's going to make it harder to get things done. All right. As I mentioned before, I have been part of like large teams, and at certain points I was manager for 10, 15 people through some through some of the rougher times. 15 people reported to me directly, and the more people you add, the harder it is to manage. If you imagine that there is one question coming from each person that's reporting to you per day, right? So one question per day. Well, if you just have one person, not a big deal. One question per day, not that bad. All right, let's say you have 6 people working for you. You have 6 questions per day, and let's say it takes you 10 minutes to answer each one. That's an hour you're burning right there. Just one question each. Let's say they have multiple questions per day. All of a sudden, you are basically like talking to people, emailing people, and answering questions for multiple hours a day. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take many questions. So, and I was just keeping that simple, right? If you happen to have like a more complicated question come in, and maybe takes you more than 10 minutes, or maybe you have to talk to them or do a video chat with them, and that takes a while too. So anyway, the point is, grow slowly. Here's why. Every time you hire a person, it's more complicated. And I'm totally ignoring like the fact that, potentially, depending on how you're putting together your team, if they could talk to each other, you're going to end up with even more communications channels. So it's communication channels. So basically you gotta remember that. And here is the general org chart. So that's me with the the green circle there. It could be, whoever it is, it's probably you in most cases. I interface directly with the writers and a content manager. I'll show you how to grow it, right? There's a lot of people on here right now, but I'll show you how to do it, 1 through 5 phases here. So it'll be really clear and like easy to understand. And I'll tell you what each person does too. All right, so phase 1, here's what happens. Like you hire one writer. That's it. You just hire one writer, and you serve as like the content manager and editor. I'll tell you what that role does in my team anyway. And at this point, it's pretty straightforward. You tell them what to write. Maybe you give them a template or some sort of guide or an outline, or whatever you want. After you work with a writer for a little while, you could just give them the title, and then you get an article back, and that's great. Then you can put it into WordPress, or you can have them put it into WordPress, or however you want to format it. I just have them submit it via a Google Doc, and then I can take a quick look at it, move it over to WordPress, format it, put some subheadings, whatever, and then some images, and then publish it, right? So this is the easiest form. Phase 2, you hire another writer, potentially. And you can add a content manager to that also. Now, the thing is, We'll get into the specific role of the content manager. I'm just showing you how it can grow. The thing is, this may be after a week or two. After the writers are already trained, they're submitting the right quality, they understand how to format the work. And, in this phase, you may have to, you get an article from the first writer. You may give them some coaching points and say, you know what, it'd be great to have, a little bit shorter paragraphs. That's a common one for me. And I'd like it to be a little bit more conversational and informal. And just let them know, and they'll improve. So you should give them feedback as you go. So, and as we're growing, this is phase 3 here. You'll see we doubled the writers and we still have one content manager. So, a lot of times a content manager can, handle several writers, and it depends on the throughput and the bandwidth of each of the writers and the content manager. So you may have to play with this. If your content manager doesn't have much time, but your writers do, then maybe it needs to look like this for a little while, but you just have to figure out the right number of articles written per writer and the content manager, like how many hours they could put in. I see Addie is on, what's up, and Brad as well. And then here, phase 5 is, really as big as you want to grow. And it's essentially 2 content managers and several writers. This is kind of how my team sits a lot of times, either like this with several writers and 1 content manager, or you have this sort of layout here. And at this point, I may have 3 or 4 of the writers to 1 content manager, and then 3 or 4 to the other content manager, and it works really well that way. Now, as far as time frames, and I'm gonna post a sort of accompanying type blog post where you can see some of these images as well. So I should have pulled that up earlier, but I'm just gonna grab it really quickly for you here. And so it's there, so you can refer to it there. And what I'll mention is, okay, as we're here on phase 1, I'm going to give you some time frames. So I really did want to lay out sort of how the team's going to grow, and I guess show you the org chart. I think that really helps people visualize what's going on and how to deal with it. So let's see here. Okay, so in this phase 1 area, sorry about that, everyone. Hopefully the link is helpful for you there. So with this phase 1 with a writer, we're really talking about a week. You could probably have the writer submit, 1 to 4 articles to you. And this could be a totally fresh writer. You're just hiring them and seeing how they can do, how you work together. A lot of times though, I'll hire 2 writers at one time, maybe even 3, and I'll keep the best 1, or at least get rid of, people that I didn't enjoy working with. Sometimes, they don't read all the directions. Sometimes they don't take feedback well. Sometimes they're poor communicators, and you just have to, work from there. But you should hire more people to trial them than you think you need. So if your goal is to hire, 5 writers, you should probably, plan on hiring 10, and then assuming there's going to be some people that don't work out. So now the thing is, don't do it all at once, right? If you try to hire that many people all at once, that's going to be your full-time job for a few days. So as we're going through here, phase 2 is really hiring, 2 to 3 writers. And what I do, and I sort of glossed over this point before, I typically am going to promote one of the writers who, I've enjoyed working with. They seem to have good communication skills. I'll ask them if they want to do, a different job. At this point, they've written several articles, and I'll see if they want to, step up to a content editor, content manager, and go from there. most of the time, it's like a 75% success rate. People do want to, do something a little bit different. After they write a bunch, taking a break is like preferable in a lot of ways. And, depending on what they're doing, they could be earning more by, working as a content manager or editor. So at this phase 2, you're spending like 1 to 2 weeks on that. So we're about 3 weeks in at this point, depending on how fast you've done it. You have a couple writers and 1 content manager. So at this point, let's just like assume each writer can do, say, 3 articles per week. And, most likely that means the content manager is doing, 5 to 7 hours per week, which is totally doable. That's 1 article per day in which they're processing. Don't forget, I'm going to tell you what the content manager and editor does in a moment. So overall here, you're publishing like maybe about 6 articles per week, and that's modest. Some writers are going to say, hey, I want to do 1 article per day. So, 5 days a week, and that could be 2 articles, a day if you have that sort of level. Now, you don't have to do what they're capable of doing. You let them know what you need, depending on your budget, number of keywords, and different stuff like that. But at this point, you potentially could be publishing, 6 articles a week. And this is only a team of 3, okay? So think about that for a second. This is only a team of 3. We have, writers producing like 3 articles per week, and we have a content manager working like 5 or 6 hours a week. This is a small team, but it's putting out like, 6 times more content than a lot of, websites are doing. All right, phase 3. Again, this is where you're adding more writers. This is just an assumption, but let's say your content manager says, hey, yeah, you know what? I like this work. I can handle, I'd like to do 10 to 12 hours per week. And at that point, you have more capacity, right? So you can check with your writers. Maybe they don't want to write anymore. You can hire a couple more writers. So at this point, like the writers are getting better from the original couple weeks. You have a couple more to train here, but your process, your templates are getting better. Your content manager is getting faster. They are, publishing. You, of course, check out what they're working on and you give them feedback. So they'll get better and faster over time. Maybe you tell them, hey, you need to look out for the subheadings. I'd like to have more subheadings in here. And I'd like them to be, in the form of a question, like Jeopardy, for example. So at this point, you're sort of throttling like the amount of content coming through based on your budget and then the bandwidth of your team. So it's not too complicated. Like I mentioned, like we're assuming the writers can do maybe 3 articles each. And now we're saying the content manager is working, maybe 10 to 12 hours per week. And this works, right? So at this point, you could potentially be publishing 12 articles per week, okay? So there's 12 articles per week. You have a small team of 5 here. That is a lot of content. You will run out of keywords unless you have just a huge pile of keywords. And of course, right, so if we're doing the math on this, let's just keep it simple and say, each one of those articles is costing like $15. So what did I say? 12 and 15. So 12 and 15. So it's $180 of content. Plus you have about 10 hours at 20 hours a week, or sorry, 20 hours, $20 per hour. So that potentially is going to be around, $200 there. So it's not cheap, right? You have 5 people producing content for you. You got 12,000 words of content going out per week in 12 separate articles. And you have a team of 5. But the thing is, in 1 month, you can put out a lot of content. So that's 48 pieces of content with this team of 5. Everyone's working part-time. And from you, all you're doing is delivering keywords and then making sure that the writers are giving you like links to the Google Docs, and then you're giving the content manager and editor links to those Google Docs. Does this make sense to everyone? Let me know in the chat. Just say, yeah, I know what you're talking about. This makes sense. So as we're going through here, phase 4 is, maybe you add another writer depending on the capacity. It's totally up to you. Phase 5 is, hey, you have just a huge pile of keywords. You've spent weeks finding hundreds of keywords, and you have, a team just pushing out content. At this point, you're publishing, 4 articles a day or whatever you want to do. And kind of the way I like to do it is have the writers do some work ahead of time. So there's sort of a queue of articles that need to be processed by a content manager. The content manager is sort of a higher level VA in this case. So I don't want them sitting around asking for more work. I want them, to work through their pile of articles and, push it forward. So Paul says, yeah, Adam, you got it. And Mal says, okay, yeah. So everyone understands. That's great. And the beauty of this, right? So at this point, this is like the module of it's the modular way to look at the team. So you can build like multiple sets of this phase 3. Now I didn't draw dotted lines around here to make it more like a hierarchical type setup here, but you can set it up that way. So the point is you could set up, a team here. Let's say you have another website or you want to start another website. Remember, don't grow too fast. Don't scale too fast. But if you have another website and you wanted content to be created over there, you could just create another team just like this. Working on another site, you could push out, massive amount of content. It's pretty crazy if once you slowly grow, and we're talking maybe a month to 6 weeks to grow up to about this point here. As I mentioned, you only need a team like this big to be publishing, more than 1 article per day. You only need this many people, maybe less, right? If you have some professional writers, you probably only need a team of 2 or 3 if they're writing 1 article per day, 5 days a week, let's say. That's still very reasonable. If someone if they have a journalistic background and they are a professional writer, they're going to be able to write a few thousand words per day, without burning out. So, okay. So this is sort of how you grow. And of course, when we're looking at phase 5, this basically could just be ongoing until you run out of keywords. And, it is possible to run out of keywords at that point if you're, running this sort of a team for multiple weeks in a row. Okay. So big thing here is saving 24,360 minutes, which is, many, many hours. So as I mentioned, I was working slower than the content manager and the editor. And this was just, me realizing I was the bottleneck and then taking action on it. So most of the time, 99.99% of the time, I am the problem in my business. I'm making things go slower. I'm taking too long to make decisions. I'm not working fast enough or whatever. And the thing is, once I got this content manager in place, it changed everything. Now, the thing is, I wasn't sure about getting access in WordPress. So basically I give editor access to my content manager. So they have the ability to, just change other people's, or they have the ability to edit posts, right? They can put new posts up, they can edit posts and that sort of thing. You can give them just author level, but the point that I'd make someone a content manager and I'm working through Upwork, like I am, I trust them and I'm okay giving them editor access. They can't, add like new plugins. They can't do anything like affecting the admin section of your site. They can just edit content. So the thing is, I really thought that I was the one that should be doing the content management stuff. But I was like, okay, if I had to get rid of this part of it, what would I do? So this is the task list, right? So if you're curious about what they do, then this is a good baseline. This is what I have my folks do, the content managers. But you can, edit it to fit whatever you want them to do. In fact, I encourage you to modify this, right? It's a good starting point. So I'm not going to read this to you. You can read it yourself, of course. And it's in the post, right? So the post that I put in here, you can check it out. But basically, the core stuff is like adding, edit the grammar, edit the words. So they're doing that. That's not too bad. Just fix spelling issues, grammar, whatever. And then from there, they're drafting in WordPress. They're adding backlinks to other sites. They add affiliate links for me. They don't have access to my dashboard, but they use a format for adding affiliate links. Very simple. And then they add images and a YouTube video. Then I don't have to do anything. See, it took me longer because probably I would be editing more of the content and more. I just couldn't help myself, right? I'll just be honest. Couldn't help myself but to edit some of the content and change some of the phrasing, even though it really wasn't necessary. Now, I have multiple people doing this content management stuff that just makes it way easier for me. So next, that is sort of the conclusion of the core part. I do want to mention a couple things. So first off, as normal, there's no pitch in this webinar today, right? Can't buy anything, not selling anything. However, selling something next week. So I'll tell you about that. Selling something next week is my premium course. It's a high-end premium course on Amazon affiliate sites. It's called 5-Figure Niche Site. If you've been on the email list for a little while, you probably heard about it. If you haven't, I hope this was sort of a good introduction. And wow, my chair just dropped down there. I hope this was a good introduction, and you'll hear more about it next week. I will just give a quick preview. It's a 13-unit course that's released over the period of like 8 to 9 weeks. There are multiple levels, so if you have a smaller budget for investing in education, which is exactly what this is, it will be just the core units. If you want more group interaction and like group coaching calls, that there's a package for that. And if you want one-on-one attention, it's super limited, but you work with me one-on-one and that sort of thing. So there's more information coming out. Brad, the pricing comes out next week. Okay, it is like I said, a premium high-end course. So just keep that in mind. It comes out next week. So on Monday is when you can get more information about it. Okay. And basically, I'll read this exactly. This course was created with proven principles, techniques, and strategies that work. And here's the very big deal, right? So I've done stuff before, right? I've implemented some of the things that I've described. I could do it, right? But who cares if I could do it? I need to be able to teach other people. I need to be able to tell you, Brad, Adam, I need to be able to tell you how to do something and why, and then have you be successful in it. And that's what I've been able to do with the course through multiple years of coaching other people and just multiple case studies. So I didn't put too much in here. Again, I try not to pitch too hard, sell too often, or anything like that. I respect, people's time and all that. But in general, like, the big deal here is, like, I've taught other people. There are people that have gone through the course and, they're successful. There's some information on the email list that's going to come out next week, and you'll see that. You'll be able to, make the decision based on what you know. And yeah, so let's get to the Q&A here. We'll stop sharing. Saw a couple questions come through. Not too many, but yeah, keep the questions coming here, and I will go from there. So, all right. So I see we have Adam says you missed the math on the cost for a 1,000-word article. It's $14 to $15 articles. Yeah. So actually, you got the math exactly right. So it's about $15 for content, $10 to $20 for a content manager. Yeah. So it's 25 to 35, depending on, exactly how much you're paying. But yeah, you got it. Brad says, do I make the content available to educational institutions as curriculum? I have not ever done that before. And Brad, you emailed me the other day, I think, right? And I think you work for an educational institution. That's why you're asking. Yeah, I haven't ever done it before. Oh, it's another Brad. Okay. Well, that's crazy. There was someone. Oh, maybe it was Brett. I wonder if Brett will watch this later. But yeah, I haven't done that, but I don't know. It does become sort of a, I guess, there's the learning management system. There's some technical aspects that could be an issue with it. Okay. Tahin, do I hire native writers as editor? So me personally, I basically hire like English speaking. So I don't know what native is for you, Tahin. So whatever language you need it to be written in, hire people that, speak that natively. That's what I do. Can you get cheaper content from non-native, like fluent speakers? Maybe. Most likely, yeah. But, I don't have time. I don't have time to spend to do that. And like I said, I'm more interested in an ROI. So, and yeah, let's think about it a little bit, right? So let's say I can get an article for $100, but it's awesome, and it's going to go on a page that is making money. And I think if I can publish even better content, then it's going to make $1,000 per month for the ongoing, right? Well, it's a no-brainer. That is a wonderful investment, even though the article costs 10 times what other people may be able to do it for. It's great. You got to think about the ROI. Now, let's look at it another way. Let's say I can get an article for $4. Okay, let's say I can get it for $4, but it will never make any money because it is terrible. Well, that's a bad investment. So always think about the ROI. All right. And then Brad says, a follow-up on the question before, you've always wondered why schools don't teach at this high level of my course. Yeah, I don't know. I would imagine I've been out of school for a little while. So I have no clue. I would imagine that if you want to get like a good education like this, you're probably getting it at home or through like some other area. Like I feel like schools are sort of behind like what we're talking about. Like I just couldn't imagine it, but I've been out of school for a little while. Paul says, when when requesting an article, do I give the writer a subject, a list of long tail keywords, and a template? I give them the title, and I give them a template, but give them some flexibility. And I'm always I trial a writer, right? So I give them one article to write, and I give them, what I'm talking about. I never give them a list of long tail keywords. I don't want them to do SEO writing. The problem, if you get an SEO writer or someone who says they know SEO writing, they're probably going to not write how I want them to, if that makes sense. So the problem with anything dealing with SEO, I'd rather have someone who doesn't know anything, and then I can teach them what I want them to know. But if there's an SEO writer out there, you don't know where they got their education from. Chances are, because I'm a real particular, I know exactly what I want, and I'm a control freak. So I don't want someone to tell me how to do keyword research or like SEO in my on-page stuff, because I know how to do it and I have a specific thing that I'm trying to do. So the point is, I don't give them long tail keywords because the writer's going to screw it up. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. Paul, if you have follow-ups, let me know. Adam says, for writer templates, do I provide anything for the introduction section? No, I've never conveyed this very well when I've outsourced an article for writing for Amazon, blah, blah, blah. So what I do, I let the writer write. If you give them like too tight of a template, it's going to shut people down, like some people down. So usually I give them some flexibility and that sort of thing. What I do is I tell my editor to make sure there's a strong hook at the beginning, right? Because that is a higher level person. They see what I'm trying to do. They kind of understand the format, and I've worked with them longer. And I just have them tighten it up. So hopefully that helps you, Adam. I just, I let the writers do their thing, and I let the editor focus on other areas. In fact, a writer should self-edit and do a good job editing their own stuff. But when you're paying, I'm getting a good deal on my articles, right? So the amount that I'm paying is modest. I'm sure other people think it's super expensive, but I think it's modest. And I know that my writers are trying to write a little fast. So I'm allowing the editors to catch the mistakes, right? It's okay. There's going to be some grammar mistakes, and I've written stuff that I've tried to edit myself, and I missed some stuff, right? Because I was a little bit in a hurry. So let the editor, the content manager, take care of those little things. Brad says, does the content manager take care of research for what topics to broaden out into? No. Furhan says, how much do I break down the article topic for a writer? Just break down to subheadings. I usually don't do that, but it depends on the specific article that I'm going for. Furhan, if you refer back to last week's webinar and training and the 2 ways to streamline content, if I'm writing a full outline for a very thorough type of research paper method, RPM, then I break it down deep. But if I'm just doing straight up articles, stuff we're talking about today, I just give them the title. Jerry says, how are the writers at Human Proof Designs? Dom's a good friend of mine. I've never ordered the content from Human Proof Designs, so I'm not 100% sure on a personal basis. I am an affiliate for them. I like Dom. He's a friend of mine. I've heard from people who said that content from Human Proof Designs is awesome, and I'm ordering more. Right? So I have some students that ordered content and they loved it. So that is all I can go off of. Jerry, I would recommend to trial them out, order 1 article, see what's up, see if you like it. See if you like working with the process, right? They have a specific process. If you don't enjoy working with the process, Brand Builders is out there too. I know those guys there. There's Andrew and John, also friends of mine. I think they're a little more expensive at brand builders, but maybe you like their process better. I have ordered some content from brand builders, and it was really good. It was formatted really well. But I'm kind of a do-it-yourselfer, so I kind of built my own team like I described because it's faster and it's ridiculously cheap compared to like other services out there. So Jerry, I hope that helps. Those are two services in which I am an affiliate for. They're my friends. Those are guys I trust, and I believe you'll get good customer service, and you should check out each of them, see who you like to work with better. Brad says, for example, you could use a bit of help for your own sites, how to streamline content. It's easy to spend 1 to 2 hours doing keyword research on the weekend and then just follow the path it takes you down, add the whole whack of keywords for your writer to create posts, but you love to visualize a nice clean way to get a plan going. And you think the only way to do it is to do all the research up front before building out the site. Or you could just do like sprints of work. That's what I just work better that way. So Brad, I would say, you don't have to do all the keyword research up front. You can just do, find 30. It's going to take you a little while for the team to work through 30 articles, like regardless. Even if you have a big team, it's going to take a little while. And if you just have like a small team, you find 30 keywords to write articles about, that's going to take you, maybe 3 to 6 weeks. Mal says, what sort of profile details should I look for when I'm looking for a writer on Upwork? Do they need expertise in my area? Okay, here's the deal. I never look at the profile details until they apply. So you need to put up a job posting and then see who applies. And then I usually ask a couple of questions that allow me to, exclude or include someone. I never interview them. I may ask a follow-up question, but I ask a couple questions that sort of like get them in or get them out. Do they need to have expertise? Totally up to you. It depends on how complex it is. If you are, let's say it's a site on like scuba diving or something. Yeah, you probably want someone to know what they're talking about. If it's about like, backcountry mountain climbing or again, something with some skill level, you probably need to make sure they have expertise. But if it's just general stuff, then I would say no. Adam says, did the content manager take care of SEO for on-page items like headings, the SEO title, the SEO description, alt tags, keywords shown once in content? So headings, yeah, in general, they do. There are probably half the things that you mentioned on there don't actually matter much. But the title, they don't have to do. It's already been done because of the keyword research. SEO description, no, like the meta description, I think you're asking, that doesn't matter anymore. I don't even fill that out. Google just takes whatever they want, by the way, if you didn't know that. Sometimes the meta description will be there. Other times they just take some other thing from your page. So I don't do it. Subheadings, yeah, for sure. They do the subheadings. The writers should be doing subheadings, but if not, the editor can step in and do a little more. Alt tags and captions, for sure, yes. Keywords shown once in content. Yeah, I don't tell them to do that keyword stuff because, again, like it doesn't really matter. If the writer wrote the article in a natural way, then it's not going to be an issue. It'll be in the title, and that's really all you need. Furhan, do I give writers a deadline or am I flexible? I'm typically flexible because of the way the team goes. And because of the way I have my team structured, I have like a queue of articles already waiting. So I don't need to have a tight deadline. I usually give them sort of a loose deadline that's flexible because the editors are not waiting for the articles to be done. I hire the writers first. Fern says, you recall last week the beer article, you gave loads of additional links. Okay, that's just a statement. I don't know what your question is there. Sorry. Paul is out, back to work. Cool, thanks for joining in. All right, any more questions? I made it to the end of the questions. So here's the deal, Furhan. On the article, like the example from last week is a different model from what we talked about today, okay? So you can combine the things, but you need to understand what we did last week is different than what we talked about today. If you want to combine the things, just combine them, give them links, whatever you want to give them. Don't give them links. You can tell them, hey, also, by the way, I'm just telling you what I do. If you want to modify it because you want to tell people, right? Let's say you're a control freak as well, and you want to tell your writer how many times to use a keyword, and you want to tell them where to use it, and you want to give them a bunch of links, give them the links. Do however you want to combine everything is totally up to you. A lot of times when I present this information, I'm presenting a distinct standalone piece of information, right? Like today, scaling, building a team. You could use the same model for like graphic designers, okay? You can do it for graphic designers and hire, people that are doing images for you and just change the names, right? So instead of a writer, it's graphic designer. Instead of content manager and editor, it is a graphic manager, right? So you can modify this however you want. I'm giving you standalone pieces. When you combine it with other stuff that I'm teaching, that's powerful, right? So I don't go into this often. This is like the advanced stuff, right? So if you combine the stuff that I told you last week with what I'm telling you today, that is some deep stuff, right? That's 2.0, like you end up with sites that you can sell for $235K. Most people are not ready to combine the stuff. But if you are, do it. Put this together with a link building campaign from 3 weeks ago. That's crazy, right? Put that together with the guest posting stuff that I told you from like a little further back. Well, then you have content all taken care of. You have a SEO campaign that you're working on that's multiple phases, and then you have a team of outreach people doing stuff. You're just a manager at that point, overseeing your team. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Adam says, do I provide how to structure your Amazon sites? For instance, are they best of type keywords, anything that fits your keyword standard? Many Amazon sites are typically an intro with 10 or so review products. You're not sure if that's how I do things too. So yeah, I provide how I structure the sites. If you go to, I'll give you a link here. Give you a link here, Adam. Boom. So there is sort of a template there. And most of the time, best of type keywords are great. I also do a large amount of informational how-to type content as well. There are rarely 10 products in one review. That's, that's too many. That's too many. And most of my articles that go like really deep and that do really well, maybe there's 5 articles, but there's like, 5,000, or sorry, there's like 1,000 words for each of those 5 products, right? And in general, my expectation is that I do things differently than most other sites that you've seen because I'm not like following someone else's plan at this point. It's my own. All right. Furhan says, I'm trying to gauge the scope of a template for hiring a writer for the first time. Gotcha. If you have the ability, okay, so if you're hiring someone for the first time, if you have the ability to give them a loose outline with a couple references, that's great. A lot of times, you know, in my sort of job aid, I tell them, here's how I would find those resources. So sure, you can give them the resources. That's deep, right? That's what we talked about from last week for the research paper method. But if I'm like, what I reverse engineered it, right? I don't want to go and find the resources and give it to someone. I don't want to do that. It takes up my time when it's not a skilled task, right? Anyone can do it. It's like 4 steps. So tell them, hey, you know, go Google this term or whatever the topic is, find some good information, use 3 resources, blah, 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 right? So teach them, right? People are very smart if you give them a chance. All right, it looks like the questions have slowed down. Adam, thanks for joining up. Glad you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. All right, any more questions? If not, we're going to finish it up here today. And okay, cool. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. And yeah, it looks like we're done. So like I said, the course comes out next week. If you're on the email list, which you should be, if you're attending this, you're on the email list. You should get emails, so check those out and you let me know what's up. So the thing is, okay, and where can you view this video? Again, you'll get an email link, Mal, for the replay, and probably in a few weeks I'll put it up on YouTube, but you'll get a special replay link in a few hours. I think it's like just 6 hours, something like that. Later on today, you'll get a replay link. So you can check it out, watch it at your leisure at that point. So, all right, I'm out of here, folks. Thanks again. See ya.